agreeing to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Awesome. And just curious, where are you based out of?
I'm in New York City, in Manhattan.
Awesome. 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 Thank you. Well, I'm super excited to have you here, Dr. Alex Cahana. You know, you've done so many amazing things in the past, and you're involved with so many exciting things present day as well. You know, you're obviously a physician, an anesthesiologist. You've interacted with various healthcare systems, not only in the United States, but around the world. And then you're a technologist. And so I guess my first question for you is, you're involved with so many different things. What does the majority of your time, what is it dedicated to, and what does your day-to-day look like in terms of the distribution of you know, efforts that you dedicate your time to?
Well, I'd like to say that obviously this is something that evolves with time. And as a professional who has spent close to 30 years in the medical field and practiced in multiple countries and multiple continents, I would want to say that I have a pretty good grasp of how the healthcare industry is in different markets. And I've been always involved in technology integration in the clinical workflow, even before it was called that, you know, before there was the cloud or biohacking or the quantified self. In these times, specifically in the post-COVID era, which kind of proved that whatever healthcare is, it's not working on a global level. It really created an acceleration to this transition from Web 2 to Web 3. And so I would say half of my day is to speak to governments, people, international organizations, companies that have 3 letters in their name. What is Web 3.0 and what transition are we talking about? And I would say the other half is to actually work with these technology or technology-enabled companies that are building these solutions and either connecting them to markets or to use cases or to capital. And that's kind of more or less my day, and it's wonderful because it's creative, it's co-creative with the people that I work with. It's really, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just trying to figure out how to move forward.
Awesome. Awesome. We had briefly interacted in Austin. I'll give you a little bit of context for myself. I'm a ER physician, work in the community in Houston, Texas, and I kind of ran into the Web3 world through, you know, kind of not a structured way. You know, I saw people talking about NFTs and all this hype around celebrities getting in, and that was kind of my entryway into it. And then I realized that there was a kind of core technology under it that was, you know, revolutionary when it came to every sector and every industry, and that included healthcare, which is how I found myself at this conference. And I remember you saying, I was looking at the notes from your presentation, saying that blockchain needs healthcare and healthcare needs blockchain. And so I guess, could you kind of tell me, why does healthcare need blockchain? You know, in short, why is that?
Well, I think that, and again, healthcare is different, you know, in advanced economies versus, I would say, emerging markets and developing economies. But in general, as much as healthcare has advanced in terms of technology and discovery and finding new ways, new treatments, new surgeries, new tests, it has done a very poor job in creating a viable business model. And as a system, it has created a lot of capital leakage and a lot of friction that adds already to the suffering of its users. And anybody who waited in line for a service or a treatment, or anybody who got a medical bill home, kind of like I said, what is going on here? And there's kind of like an economic discrepancy between what we can afford and what we can access. And it has created almost uniformly in the world a 2-tier or sometimes even 3-tier healthcare system, where you have private and you have public, and then you really have the migrant, indigenous, asylum seeker, refugees, you know, people who really nobody cares for. And I think, again, just like my career, there's nothing planned here. There was no intellectual intention to be a systems thinker and say, okay, how am I going to figure this out? I think that the interest in Web3 is specifically for creating new viable business models to help with healthcare. And in that sense, that's why I say that healthcare needs blockchain, because blockchain for me is the software solution of trust. So if I give you $20 using a distributed ledger, you know it's me, I know it's you, and it's $20. And there's no notary or intermediary or bank or something in the middle that requires to verify that. And so if we agree that blockchain is the software for the social problem of trust, healthcare is rife with mistrust. I don't believe the pharma companies, the pharma doesn't believe the government doesn't believe the hospitals the nobody believes anyone. I want to believe, right? I'm an optimistic guy. I want to really think that they're telling me the truth, but I'm very suspicious. And if everybody's sus, it's very difficult to kind of, navigate through that information, misinformation, and all these ulterior motives and forces that are behind. And so I think that healthcare, from all the industry verticals that are out there, be it a data-rich environment, a sensitive data environment, lends itself to be the most disrupted and most relevant industry vertical for these type of decentralized technologies.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Everyone is kind of in their own silo, their own bubble, and it's barely hanging on. But like you said, no one trusts the other silo, and they always feel like it's the other silo that's the issue. And you kind of alluded to it earlier that the pandemic really, proved something that all of us knew already, but even proved it probably to the broader audience that what we're doing is not working. And you, in your day-to-day, obviously interact, you mentioned, with a lot of three-letter organizations and whatnot. They obviously know that and have some sense that things are not working. Do they, right now, do you have a feeling that they kind of get that something needs to be done? And if they get that feeling, do they see blockchain as that kind of tool to allow them to get that done? Or is there still a lot of work to be done to kind of make that leap to then actually, start developing integrations and technologies to move that needle?
Yeah, it's a great questions. I would say yes, yes, and yes. When I speak to the need to introduce decentralized business models, decentralized technologies, decentralized governance for data, people who listen to me have one of three responses. Some of them say, "Oh my God, what he's saying it's exactly what I think. He's saying it so eloquently. Let's do it." Others are saying, "Oh my God, if he's right, we're in trouble." And then there's a third group saying, "Why am I listening to this? It's not relevant. I asked him about one thing and he's talking to me about something else." And so I think it's important to identify yourself. Where are you? Are you in the pre-contemplative phase and everything is good for you? Because there are stakeholders that are enjoying the current power structure and are enjoying the current status quo and don't see any impetus or need to change anything. But then most of us are not in that camp. And so, yes, there are companies, and they're very sophisticated, by the way. Nobody in the Web 2 got to where it was by being simple-minded. It's just that there's this hard realization that we are moving from a commodity economy to a digital economy. So a commodity economy is a win-lose situation where it has to be extractive and exploitive and rent-seeking, because otherwise I'm not ahead of the pack. If I'm not, on the menu, then I'm in the plate and I'll be eaten. And we're moving instead into a digital economy, which is infinite. So as a winemaker, I can make 8 billion bottles of wine. I can say that's enough. I don't need to do any more, but it's finite. But if I record all the behaviors of the 8 billion, I have X amount of exabytes that can be monetized. And so it's infinite. So it's a different mindset. Not only is it a win-win, but it's a mindset of abundance where we can co-create, where we can work together, and there's no need to be extractive, exploitative, and exclusionary. And that's a different way of doing it.
That makes sense. And kind of what we're talking about in all of these scenarios at the core is data, right? It's transferring data, it's proving a certain piece of data, it's getting data out of silos. And I found that talking about data in a way that is kind of simple, to me at least, is helpful, right? So I have an Apple Watch or whatever kind of device, and it gathers data on me, it gives me health data, and I don't own that data. And then the corporation that I'm buying my device from can do whatever they want with that data. And that's not something that most of us on a day-to-day basis question at all. It's just kind of, quote, that's how it is, and kind of that's the end of the story, as long as my device works the way I want it to work. End of story. How do we as a society get to a point where that is not the status quo and that is in question, and we make that leap to that data is mine, and then I could allow the Apple or whoever it may be to do whatever they want with it, or get reimbursed for it, or whatever that case may be? How do we kind of start that conversation and then actually get to that place?
Well, you asked a couple of things and I'll try to unpack it. You're absolutely right that what we're talking about is data, and that's a data economy. And what we're suffering is data illiquidity, because at the end of the day, the way the current business model is consumption, right? A test for every pest, a pill for every ill, and so forth. But it's also data asymmetry. I know something you don't, so I'm going to charge a lot so you can have it. So that's how the business model in general looks like. But with the democratization of data, there's no need to behave that way. So I'm old enough to remember that there used to be travel agents, not because I was rich or anything, but because they were the only ones who had data on flights. Now you can do it on your own, and nobody says, oh, unless you want to use a travel agent, you're perfectly competent to do your own travel hacks. So the same thing with traveling that is totally intuitive and nobody double questions it. In healthcare, it could be the same. And so what we're used to in terms of thinking in the framework or the conversation of data in healthcare, and those who design it and those who create regulations around it, is really all about security and privacy. And they're very robust, I would say, regulatory and jurisdictional questions of how should we form that. But nobody really talks about sovereignty. Nobody really talks about that ownership. So what we need, first of all, is to talk about ownership. And that, what it'll do, it'll transition the system right now, which is patient-centric, to actually be patient-driven. So it's not that I'm a product of the platform, but the platform that I'm using, I am actually a partial owner or contributing to it and invested in it. And the reason is beyond it being economic, because you can imagine that you could create monetary and non-monetary incentives to be part of that economy. It's really even more deeply rooted, and that is in dignity. Because if you think about it, I am my actions. My actions are recorded by data. And so if a third party takes that data and uses it or loses it or abuses it without my permission, or maybe with my permission, but on page 49 with font 3, they're actually taking a piece of me. So I don't recall last time when 23andMe sold my stuff to GSK that I got a check home. I don't recall my insurance company sending me a check of $25K because I wasn't on OxyContin this year. And that's what we're talking about, this exclusionary economics. So if we are able to figure out how can we include people with their data, they would actually be more invested in cultivating that data and investing in the quality of that data. And like I said in one of my EU policy briefs, I said, data is like money. Now, I don't mean monetization of data. I mean as money. It means that it's yours, it's private. You want to keep it in a safe wallet. You want to access it whenever, wherever, for whatever reason. And because it has value, you want to invest in it. And you want its value to accrue, and you want to give it maybe to society to donate it or inherit it to your family or friends or whatnot. So I think that there has to be a fundamental change in how we look at data, not as a commodity owned by the platforms that control our access to the digital world, but as dignified labor, and as such need to be paid for at face value.
Yeah, you put that so eloquently. We have such a weird relationship with data these days, and I think that it truly summarizes creating dignity out of the data we generate, and our actions are that data, and it's not some number or whatnot. That is a piece of a human in a way. The other kind of thing that I found really unique about yourself is that you obviously have done a lot of work in Africa and Central America, and a lot of the folks that I've had conversations with, on this podcast or offline, we talk a lot about the US. What is the relationship abroad when it comes to blockchain and healthcare? And is it, I imagine it's different than the relationship we have with it here. Is it something that's seen as a solution to a greater extent than here in the United States, or to a lesser extent? Or if you could share some insights on that, I'd be appreciative.
Sure. I can mostly speak to Africa and Latin America, where I work most. I visit often in Asia, so to some extent I'm familiar with what's going on there. But what I will say will represent mostly my experiences in East and West Africa, and in a few countries in Central and South America. And first of all, you see that I avoid saying first world, third world, or developed and developing, because they have post-colonial tinges. And I think that it's just simply not right to say developed. What does that mean? I'm done. So we're all developing towards something. So the way I differentiate between these economies, hence also the way healthcare is that there are obese economies and lean economies. And so in an obese economy, you have all these intermediaries, and you have all this friction, and you have all these pills that treat the side effects of pills, that treat the side effects of other pills for ailments that can be solved by exercising and eating a tomato. So we've created a whole foundation built on artificial solutions, both in energy or in finance or in food or in big chem or big, choose your flavor. And it's not surprising that healthcare in that sense represents, 20% of our GDP, and we're an outlier of being the most expensive with the least value, if value is, for example, life expectancy. So it's a fancy way of saying we're, for the last 8 years, dying younger, but paying more. And so that is very different in terms of incumbents, interests, and business models of adopting, blockchain or distributed ledger technology or decentralized technologies at large. In the lean economies, they lack infrastructure. They lack incumbents. They have very strong mobile penetration. They have very good internet coverage, and they do not rely on governments to pay for anything. And so already in their mind, they have a blockchain mentality. They already have 15 years of experience using digital money. Everybody uses orange money or M-Pesa or yellow cards, or I don't know what. And they don't have banks there that you go and visit, or they write paper checks or do all these kind of silly things that we still do in our country. So they're fully digital, and a lot of their activities are by nature peer-to-peer. And so all what blockchain is for them, introducing that element of automation or trust or lack of friction, so that you don't have to pay remittances and pay exorbitant fees, or you have to wait for weeks for transactions to be resolved. So on a technical, operational level, it's not weird for them, as opposed of it being weird for us. But more importantly, and this is something deep that I really felt after spending a couple of years there, and seeing, what is community banking, what is what they call table banking, how do they regard credit, how do they regard purchasing power, how do they look at lending, borrowing, and trading, all these little, shops where everybody's a small business, even the woman who's selling, milk and tomatoes, and they're all business. There's no B2B, B2C, it's C to C to C to C, where everyone is a business. They do not adhere. And again, I don't like to generalize, but in general, they do not adhere to this ethos of individuality. They actually understand the power of community. They understand the interdependence and the reliance of one on each other. And that's why they dealt with COVID way better than us. Because nobody exercised their constitutional right to be whatever they want. Nobody said, it's my right to cough on you. Nobody said it's my right to disrupt and keep you, grounded on the plane. They have already experiences with previous epidemics. And they're not just, and they're not hopeful. They know that all the vaccines will be hoarded in the US and in the EU. They know that it'll go to the garbage before it'll go to them. They have no illusion that the World Bank or the IMF will allow them to self-manufacture. They're already used to decades of extraction of their raw materials to the benefit of the obese economies. So this transition to a Web3 already has happened in their mind. And they have this concept called Ubuntu, which stands for I am who we are. And so that strength of family and community, and again, this is not to speak that we don't have strong communities or whatever, but the point is that they have that decentralized, community-centric mindset that already makes them sensitive to these type of solutions, and that it's not really a big deal for them.
Yeah, I think you saying they handled COVID better than us is the perfect, encapsulation of all of that. I'll talk to people here, and I think everyone will say we did not handle it perfectly or well by any means. But then I talked to them about how so and so country did this, that was better, or as a society they handle it better, and then we kind of revert to no, we're America, we did better than them. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. But that, I think that exemplifies that mindset difference between the two kind of sides perfectly. Any tangible examples of technologies that are blockchain based that have been launched, whether it's in South America or Africa or Asia, that kind of pop up to your head and as use cases that really stand out to you?
Of course. Just to give you an example, in COVID in real time, one of the companies that I work in East Africa, they created an electronic health record built on a distributed ledger, downloaded for free. And when COVID started, and they didn't have centralized repositories as organized. Neither do we, but at least we think that we do, for the CDC and state levels. But they said, let's try and figure out what is going on. And when there was a surge of a second wave of COVID, there was a suspicion that it's coming from the port city. And so we went to that port city, downloaded, almost all the citizens downloaded for free on their phones, on their Androids. And it took less than a week to find out by simply self-report that was anonymized, because we looked at semantics and not identifiers. Are you a cougher? Do you have difficulty breathing? That it came from the truck drivers. And so then quarantine the truck drivers, and COVID went down 90%.
Wow.
And so, obviously then the hospitals there said, this is really good. Could we use it? They didn't have incumbent electronic health records that had lobbyists in Congress saying that, you can't use it because you're on a dead contract for the next 30 years. And now it serves, for example, a large network of faith-based hospitals that serve tens of millions of individuals. And so we were able to leapfrog them from analog to Web3. So if before it was on a card, give me your name and I'll write this, to now suddenly it's on your phone and you have access and you control the data and you say what you will release to your doctor at what time for how long and so forth. And so that is just a very simple example of something that could be tomorrow. It could be used in rural communities. I'm not alluding myself that it should be done here in Manhattan, but there are a lot of underserved, vulnerable communities in the United States that would benefit from such a solution.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. It's kind of goes back to that saying that, technology is not going to solve problems. It's how you use technology. And that's a perfect example. Just because we may have, invented a technology or talk a whole bunch about it, if you don't use it in the way that it can help society, it won't matter. And that's a perfect example of how a technology that, may not have been founded somewhere was adapted in the right way and actually made things better and solved a problem. That's awesome.
Well,
One thing.
Let me give you
Yeah.
just an example, not from healthcare. So you'll see how awesome these things are, when you talk about gamification. So for example, okay, they have only modest levels of earnings. And so how do you boost those earnings? No, there are large multinational companies that are out there that they want to sell their stuff. I'm not going to say which ones, but beverages and foods and different brands that are American or considered, part of the staple of American culture and our contribution to the global world's nutrition. And they have no clue on what their clientele wants. So they spend enormous amounts of money on billboards. They spend enormous amounts of money on people going on their little motorpads, with their fluorescent colored names, but they don't know what the hell they're doing. So here you can create with the same technology on an electronic health record and transform a passive user to an active wealth producer. And you say, you know what, I'll make you I'll make you ambassador for the day. And so you go into you make just, I don't know, $5 a day. And so you go and you click on that company and you just go on the phone and you commute to work. And so every time your phone rings, the jingle of that company plays, you get $1. You recruit 5 people to that and they download, get another $1. You do it in 5 different locations, you get another $1. You look at YouTube and look at 5 videos of the product, you get another $1. And so you build up through activities, you incentivize, and that data, then you can release to the company. You, not the platform, you can decide. And so at the end of the day, now you have $10. Now you can go to the bar and just waste it on booze, or you can put it on a decentralized savings account and that company will double it and match it. So there are creative ways, like you said, the technology does nothing. It's what people do with that technology. So you don't need to hand out checks to people. You don't need to give them welfare. There are ways where you can leverage that technology that through you capture the value of their action and give them rewards. And so they can be the Kim Kardashian of the day. They can be that ambassador of the day or every day for that matter, and complement their income before we even talk about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and tokens and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that's so easy to grasp. It's not, something that you would have to spend days or months trying to grasp this concept. It's an easy concept. And I remember there was, they probably still exist, a sneaker kind of app where you could kind of buy sneakers and you could sell your walking data. And there was, I think for a time there, like people making hundreds of dollars just walking around every day and incentivizing the behavior to walk and whatnot. So yeah, so many creative ways to use this technology. One thing that, I'll be honest, I don't quite have a good grasp of and don't know how it incorporates into the healthcare world, or maybe it doesn't, is DAOs. What have people done with DAOs when it comes to healthcare? Is there, a role for DAOs within the healthcare infrastructure, and what may that look like?
It's funny you say that, because I think that out of all the use cases that are out there for Web3 decentralization and healthcare, I think DAO is the most transformational. So I'm happy to answer that question, because supply chain we understand, and credentialing we understand, and decentralized clinical trials and electronic health records and all those type of things, where we need to have verifiable and trustworthy data move, then yeah, I get it. But here you're touching about not only behavior and how do I incentivize healthy behavior, it's how do I self-organize. So first of all, I'll start by saying, what is a DAO? And for me, the best explanation is a DAO is a virtual community, preferably one that already exists, that all share a same mission, and where the rules of engagement are transparent, and it's owned by no one. It's owned by no one. And the rules of what you need to do in order to be part of that community are crystal clear, and you can always opt out. Now, you could say, well, I don't need another online community. I'm already on Facebook. I'm already on Clubhouse, on LinkedIn, and I Reddit. Why would I need, another one? And the answer is because at any moment, the administrator of that channel can shut it off. Because as a centralized organization, it is always attack vulnerable, censor vulnerable, and collusion vulnerable. But when it's decentralized, not an option. And so people are, of course, invited to read a recent post of how Mastodon is going to replace Twitter as a decentralized microblogging platform. But the idea of a DAO is to take a community that already has some type of organic activity. And the reason why you want to do it is A, because it's fair. And it's fair because you determine the governance that the community wants. Some communities might say, we want Alex to be responsible for everything. Okay. Or we want some type of holacracy or some type of vertical, or it doesn't matter. And the second is, and this is what really is important, that we recognize that the interactions between the members are of value, that there's a co-creative effort. So for example, you and I, we're talking right now. Okay, this is great stuff, has value for sure. Listeners are going to enjoy it. I'm going to get a viewing of this, sure. But where's the cap? What besides our internal drive to spread the good word is captured here? Nothing. But could you imagine if this would have been tokenized? If this would be able to, this value of this interaction would be captured and defined of how it's worth? And again, what's its worth? I don't know, proof of ideas, proof of new ideas, proof of creativity, it doesn't matter, proof of astonishment. It doesn't matter what the mechanism is, but you can quantify it. Just like you say, I'll give you a 5-star, a 3-star, a 1-star, and so forth. But for perennity. Now, it doesn't matter if it's going to be a non-fungible token or a non-transferable fungible token, or it's going to be all kinds. Those are names of simply vehicles. But the concept is that a DAO not only brings together in a transparent way a community, but also knows how to quantify the interactions of the members so they can trade, exchange, and invest. And so right now, the ones that work the best, they're about, I don't know, last time I looked at the DAO list was like 4,500 DAOs out there. I think there are like a couple of hundred that are, maybe 200 or something, that are healthcare-ish, because healthcare and wellness start to get mixed together. The strongest ones are in research. And again, I'll avoid from saying names, but if you look at healthcare research and DAOs, you will find that there are, so I'm interested in psychedelics, because mainstream is not interested in it. So you have a community that's interested, they're aficionados, and so they can create that. And for example, the token or that exchange of value comes into voting on research that they think is important to happen. That's true democratization of research. It is the democratization of research in the sense of that if ever a molecule will come out of it, then you will be regarded as an early investor. Now, I don't know if you know, but you were an early investor in COVID. And I don't know if you know, but Pfizer got $1,000 a second in the last 2 years from their vaccines. I don't know if you got any checks in the mail for being an early investor. I didn't. The only thing I know is that when the government is going to stop to subsidize the $40 vaccine, which actually costs only $4 to manufacture, Pfizer already announced that it's going to cost $140 for me to pay out of pocket. So clearly we need not only a decentralized data and decentralized ways of exchanging information, but also decentralized ways of trading knowledge that is valuable. And that's why DAO is so exciting. That's why hospitals that are complaining that doctors and nurses are leaving in droves, I say, create a DAO. Be a hospital DAO. Give DAO coins. Give New York Presbyterian coins. Define what they're for working hard, for having good patients, for coming up with, it doesn't matter. Quantify it, give it, not, a pizza once a year, thank you for spending 100 hours a week, but have real value, that have royalties years ahead. Then people won't leave. Insurance companies can say, wait a second, why do I want insurance? They're not covering what I want. It's too expensive. And the money that I give in doesn't work for me. So create a DAO. Like-minded people, maybe they'll want all kinds of treatments to be covered that no one else cares. Mushrooms and transgender, or whatever, sex assignment, that doesn't matter. Things that we don't want to pay for. Have it paid for. And whatever money is not in use, have the ability to stake it and to invest in it. So there are ways to do this. And I think that the corporate structure, it doesn't matter if it's in healthcare, if it's in publishing and science, and we have this whole decentralized science movement happening right now, that is going to be the real game changer because it is fair, it is transparent, and it quantifies and rewards the participants in that creator economy.
Yeah, thanks so much for explaining that. It makes sense. It's, stuff that's been neglected, whether it's diseases or individuals and whatnot, and finding a way to create that community and then, base results off of it or make decisions off of that. So that actually makes a lot of sense. So thanks for explaining that. One final question I'll ask, and this is kind of non-healthcare related. The last, week or so with FTX and everything, you probably don't interact with that many people who are completely, Web3 blockchain naive, but, people kind of my friends group and whatnot, they know that I'm interested in this area, and I've gotten a lot of texts and messages saying like, see, I knew it was a fad, or I knew it's a scam and whatnot. And kind of my default response has been, FTX, like when we talk about blockchain and Web3 and whatnot, they kind of at the core of that is decentralization, but FTX obviously is a central entity and whatnot, and it doesn't exemplify what the core of this technology is. But I guess I'm sure you've had maybe one or two individuals that kind of had a similar theme approach you. What is your response to them been, and how do you have those conversations?
Sure. So I'll divide my answer into two. The second one will be, what is Web3? So if I forget, then remind me what that should be. But in regard to FTX, actually, it's not one or two, it's one or two have not asked me, but all the rest have. And unfortunately, I found myself in the last 2 weeks, I post every other day on LinkedIn, usually on crypto health and health crypto stuff. It just had to be FTX. So anybody who hears this, feel free to reach out to all my posts that I had to write about that. And the three take-home messages are: one, what you said, it wasn't on a decentralized exchange. It was on a centralized exchange that behaved like an unregulated bank, Because in exchange, all what they have to do is hold your money, do order sets, and get, transaction fees. It is not in any shape or form saying, let me take that money to underwrite speculative investments. So that's one point. But the second point that's even more important is that there's nothing crypto about someone who committed fraud that basically misappropriated or misused client money to pay these investments without telling them. And then when people wanted to pull out, he said, I don't have money. So it's a combination of a collapse of Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns and Madoff's, Ponzonomics. So there's nothing, and it's unfortunate because now people, think that a fraud in crypto makes crypto fraudulent, which is not the case. And I urge again people to read a little bit what I wrote about it. But the third point, which is probably the most salient point, is that none of this would have been known to anybody if it wouldn't have had blockchain. In other words, because it is transparent, because analytics, people could look at the public ledger and see all the transactions. And there are very strong analytic companies that could exactly understand, even though it's anonymous, it's more pseudonymous. They can understand what are the movements and what is happening. Blockchain actually allowed this to be discovered in record speed. And because the crypto community is a real-time community, and crypto Twitter is 24/7, everything was open within days, which I don't know. I still don't know what happened in HSBC. I still don't know what happened to Credit Suisse. I still don't know what is happening in Wells Fargo and Citibank. And I hear, they needed to pay like $3 billion. What was the fine for? So here, every household knows exactly what SBF was doing every minute, because blockchain is the software solution of trust and truth. And so that's what is unfortunate, not because there's a material loss, of course, and reputational loss, of course. It is exactly because the forces that don't want transparency, the forces that don't want self-sovereignty, the forces that don't want to give you control are now playing the holier than thou, saying, you see, that's why we don't do it. To convince people that they should revert into not being owners of their health, not being owners of their wealth, not being owners of their destiny. Now, I get it that to be your own bank is scary. I get it that to be on a non-custodial wallet and not losing the seed phrase and using it on a cold wallet that's not connected to the internet can be very, very daunting for someone who's not used to it. That's someone that has grown up to be so lazy that they don't even know that on the TV, there's actually a button where you can turn it on and off and you can move channels. And so when you don't find the remote, it doesn't mean you can't see TV. But we're so accustomed to that world of doing absolutely nothing, and we give it the custody for someone else to do it, that we've atrophied our brain, we've atrophied our will, saying stuff like, well, I have nothing to hide, but it's not about hiding stuff. It's about being responsible for stuff. And so that's really what chagrins me, is that nobody knows that a day after FTX collapsed, the Federal Reserve, that hates blockchain, that hates crypto, started their pilot study of what? A federal coin, central bank digital currency, for a technology that they professed to hate, that is ruinous, that is corrupt. They started their own to do what? To have complete control, because it's going to be a centralized digital coin with all the advantages of digitization, that they own the ledger, and they can, of course, approve or not, give you access or deny payments for approved services. And this is a nightmare. This is the authoritarian dream come true. And so that's really what this is about. This is about power. This is about, technology changes behavior and by definition becomes a political act. And this is what it's really about. It's about power. Who has that power? Is it US dominance that through the US dollar, it can infinitely print money as much as it wants until it debases it? And then strengthen it at the expense of all the other lean economies? Create inflation and deflation at whim, then people just don't understand how money works. They think that money has value, not understanding that money, all what it does is an agreement. It's an agreement between you and me that I have a green piece of paper with a slave owner on it that says, "In God we trust," and I give it to you and it's worth a quarter of a cheeseburger. That's what it is. It's an agreement, but it doesn't have any value. So I think that really what happened with FTX is nothing crypto specific. And that unfortunately, it really puts back all this hard effort that we're trying to do to serve the unbanked and the underbanked and allow them financial freedom and access to financial services that otherwise they don't have. Now, to answer the question of Web3, and I'll finish with that, is just so we be sure that we understand this, for me at least, and this is a definition that I kind of came up with, which could be totally wrong, and I'm gladly accepting any criticism on it. But for me, the number after the word web represents our proximity to the digital world. Okay, there's a physical world right now. I have a computer in front of me that's on a table. I can touch it, it's real. You, on the other hand, are digital to me. And the interface is through that computer. So Web 1 was I could just look at it. There was no broadband, there was no Zoom, there was no telehealth, it was just, you would read the New York Times or the Economist paper on the screen. That's it. Web 2, which is what we work with now, is I can interact with it. So you can hear me, you can answer me, I can write on chat, time's all done, stop talking, we can do stuff. That's Web 2. Web 3 will be that the value of this interaction will be part of it owned by me and not my MacBook or Zoom or Google or whatever is holding this interaction. That there will be a transaction of monetary and non-monetary rewards through whatever tokens. And also that because we own it, we can be in the phygital space, which is physical and digital. So, you can become an avatar. I'll put my VR, glasses on. We'll go like this all around this and look at each other. And so that's Web 3. It's kind of like now, not only are we interacting on it, we're in it. We're on the cusp of it. And Web 4, which is going to use brain-computer interaction, neural dust or whatever, then we're going to be in the internet. We won't be able to distinguish what is digital and what is physical. And if you wish, and you like the Matrix, Web 5 would be not brain-computer interfaces, but computer-brain interfaces, where artificial intelligent agents will tell the biological agents what is the reality, and this dyad will decide what to do. So for me, it's just the number represents the proximity to the digital world, and Web 3 is we're closer to it, we're more part of it, and therefore the digital becomes part of our life. So wearing a shirt, wearables that detects everything, or a continuous glucose monitor, or a fit, it's normal, it's not weird, no more than wearing glasses, which is technology. I take them off, I'm blind, I put them on, I can see you. I'm not bionic because I have that. So it's no more weird than just having glasses that extend my mind, extend my capability as a human being.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it all. Now, I got to ask you one follow up on that. So, say like the internet, Web one, the internet was founded. I forget the exact date, but DOD 50s, 60s. That's when they were kind of playing with it. If we're talking about Web three, is that kind of where we're at right now? That initial stages in the 60s or whatnot, or I imagine that's kind of where we're at. Would you say?
So I would prefer to use not the beginning of the internet uh, in the 50s or 60s, but the beginning of the web, World Wide Web in the 90s.
Okay.
I think that's a better starting date. And so I would say that we are right now in Web3 where we were in Internet 1993, when Katie Kirk said, well, what's this internet thing? What do I do at? Well, what does that mean? Email. What's an email? That, oh, it's the information highway. What the hell's an information highway? And so I don't think we're going to call it NFTs or blockchain or what all these names, in 10, 20 years are not going to be used. But just as if I would tell you in 1993 to a florist, that one day there will be people that will visit you on your computer and see everything, that you have to sell, your inventory, and click on it and pay you through the computer. And there will be someone who will pick it up and send it directly to them. She'll say, you're crazy. You got to come to
Yeah.
you got to come here and pay me and get the flowers. And so it's exactly the same thing of me saying to that same florist now in 2022, that my avatar is going to visit your avatar using my NFT that is, because it's non-fungible, never changes, just by thinking of it, and deduct whatever amount in this based on the flower, I don't know, community that does, these type of purchases.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. Thanks so much for your time. When you're in school, college, residency, all of that, you have lectures, you're like, I hate lectures. And then, I finished residency 2 years ago, and you kind of miss that kind of interaction. So these conversations are just so enlightening. I learned so much, and thanks so much for your time. And it's honestly inspiring to see someone who has that kind of core medicine background doing now the stuff that you're doing. So I look forward to kind of seeing more amazing things that you do, and I'll be reading your LinkedIn posts, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for the thoughtful questions.
Happy holidays. Bye.